of people email me after we released videos about dad having akathisia saying, you know, I hope you guys get through it. It almost killed me, or I lost somebody to it, and telling me what worked for them because doctors don't really know how to deal with it. So I was collecting information because I was worried my dad was gonna die. Has she ever, I wonder, felt perceived by, like, why is this article about me? Has she ever, I wonder, felt perceived by, like, why is this article about me?
Why is this article about me?
Oh, I see. She just doesn't like me because she doesn't like the way I look. Unrecognizable from the ordinary-looking brunette from photos just a few years ago, Mikhaila today is a glossy, pouting, Barbie blonde and talks with a zealous, spiky conviction of a President Trump press spokeswoman. Ah, okay, this is getting better.
Dearest Decca, I would like to submit for your consideration 4 images. Images 1 and 2, Google thumbnail results for 2 women, one Jessica Aitkenhead, writes under Decca, and one Mikhaila Peterson. Images 3 and 4, as of the time of writing, the Twitter follower account for the same women. Why Google thumbnails, you might ask? My intention in doing so is that, as in the repetition of Warhol's image signs, a sense of a thing's being is displayed more expressively over the course of a series of images rather than when reduced to one. A moral dispute is broken out amongst the monkeys. 2 women are at its center, Decca Aitkenhead and Mikhaila Peterson. A picture says 1,000 words. Ad hominem attacks. My advice for any writer, politician, thinker, moralist, teacher is to never deploy a weapon against your enemy which you wouldn't expect deployed, returned in full, 1,000 times over in retaliation, to never bring a knife to a fist fight, a gun to a knife fight, as it were, and if you do, prepare for the consequences. You have opened a door. You have, perhaps unbeknownst to you, approved of a certain kind of approach to warfare, whether it be physical or journalistic. Suddenly, any moral footing of yours in defense against this position, this style of attack, disappears. Your assailant sees that you have intended to fight dirty, to compete a certain way, to win under any set of conditions, and as a result, your morality has become public knowledge, your attitude towards others implicitly demonstrated by this new course of action, this new weapon of yours, this new strategy you have introduced to the fight. It becomes fair game, as it were. Well, I wouldn't bring a knife to a fist fight, and I wouldn't ad hominem attack a man's daughter, but to quote Eminem, now let's talk about something I don't really do. Go in someone's daughter's mouth stealing food, but you're a fucking molehill, now I'm gonna make a mountain out of you. The female sex are concerned, preoccupied, and rightfully so, with their bodies, their breasts, their lips, both sets, their asses, their thighs, their eyes, their symmetry. This makes sense. These focal points bear intractably deep biological roots, origins in genetic fitness. Sexual health being related to these markers, displaying one's biological worthiness as a partner. We all know this is reality. Pretty girls get more attention. Hot girls at the club get more drinks. And ugly girls? Foot patrol. Beautiful girls select boys from more mates. I am always, thus, skeptical of the unattractive and cruel. And, Decca, this is the easiest thing about writing this, is that I can see through you like cellophane. I see you so clearly because I know your type, your archetype, as it were. You are just okay looking enough, as a woman, that it must be torture. You aren't bad, you're just okay. And that must be its own kind of hell, to be so ordinary. To have only 9K followers to the 100K of a pluckier, more beautiful, healthier younger girl from the new world whose father irritated your old world sensibilities. And I quote, unrecognizable from the ordinary-looking brunette from photos just a few years ago, Mikhaila today is a glossy, pouting Barbie blonde and talks with the zealous, spiky conviction of a President Trump press spokeswoman. I love that you have, with your journalistic rhetorical prowess, presented your bottom-feeding audience with a false dichotomy of a person, wherein she, this person, whom you hate, for being prettier than you, and the daughter of someone you dislike, must be either an ordinary-looking brunette or a Barbie. She rides the extremes of your idiot pen, and, as well, the attempted scarlet lettering of the phrase, President Trump press spokeswoman, is one of the most pathetically panderous lines I've ever heard performed during this ridiculous culture war theater of virtue-signaling clickbait farmers out of which you are descended. In fact, the line is so bad, it makes that book you wrote about how doing Molly is fun look like Tolstoy. Also, in photos of you I have dug up from the past, you have the exact same eye color, and dyed your hair the same color around an identical age. Mikhaila just does it better than you. Her lips are plumper, her eyes fuller, her teeth straighter. I'm reminded of that great Simpsons episode with the hilarious book of British smiles. 9K followers, 100K followers. Boring v beautiful. To reiterate, for clarity, the female sex are highly concerned, and rightfully so, with their beings, their bodies, their appearance, their symmetry. It would make sense. These have deep biological signifiers of health and life. No matter how much we try to forget, life, whether we accept it or not, is about 2 games and 2 games only. Sexual competition and resource acquisition, both being deeply interrelated. From the good and brave are the brave descended. Cowards sire cowards, base things sire base. There is a type of woman, A whatever wave of feminism we're on today kind of woman who is academic and unattractive. I spent my time in universities of this world, and they are filled with a kind of lumpy beta female who possesses no guile, no charm, and especially nothing in the way of, as Fergie would put it, lovely lady lumps. And as a result of this, beta woman's inability to employ this particular method of biological resource acquisition, that of feminine guile, they have thus decided to find it morally reprehensible. So says all morality. My biologically derived method of survival, resource acquisition, and sexual competition is noble. Yours, dishonest and immoral. An entire generation of miserably ugly women taking out their anger at God on beautiful women, like Hitler's anger with God on Jews. What a social movement. It is not the Jews' fault Hitler was an impoverished dirt farmer who sucked at art, and it is not beautiful women's fault men are charmed by them. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Bitterness has some nasty consequences. And I've noticed this wave of feminists are ugly and bitter. They are waging war on the guile type of woman, the type of woman for whom songs and poems used to be written about and performed for in times of stronger people and better sensibilities. My humps, my humps, my humps. And trust me, trust the humanities, rattle the cage, yell at the sky, beg the cage maker to reply. I promise neither will. You'll still be mediocre looking and have no answers to show for it. But before we judge too harshly, I would like to shine a sympathetic light upon your life.
This may be difficult, but could you just tell us about the moment that led to your husband's death?
Yes, it was early in the morning. We'd just woken up. It was a very sort of innocuous morning. Tony was drinking coffee on the beach, and our 4-year-old son Jake was paddling at the water's edge. And what's called a riptide, which is a current that you can't see from the surface of the sea, pulled Jake out to sea, and Tony managed to get to him and hold him afloat. And I swam to them and was able to get Jake back to shore, but Tony wasn't able to fight the current. And local fishermen got to him and managed to bring him ashore. And we thought that they'd saved him, but he'd inhaled too much seawater in his lungs while he was in the water, and he'd actually died in their arms as they were bringing him to shore.
I mean, to your sons, he's the ultimate hero, isn't he? Because he was their dad, but also he saved one of your sons' lives.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Although that brings with it its own complications for our 4-year-old, who's now 6, just because he feels obviously a sense of responsibility. And one of the hardest things for the last 2 years has been trying to release him from that sort of burden, that awful, awful burden of a sense of culpability, which is completely misplaced, totally and utterly unfair. And I just pray to God that in time he will see that. That's my biggest hope of all.
And then you write also quite very movingly about how you weighed up the moment when you want to introduce your children to the fact that your late husband, had another past, that they may not have known much about the past of a
Yes, so he was my partner, not my husband.
Sorry, your partner.
It's a really difficult question because when we first had children, I knew that this was coming at some point because Tony had a really difficult early life. He'd had a difficult childhood. He'd been adopted and had dealt with a lot of racism in Yorkshire in the 70s. And spent a lot of his youth behind bars. He'd been given a very serious prison sentence when he was still in his teens. And before our children had been born, he'd made his living through illegal means as a criminal, as a drug dealer, and he had a drug problem himself. He'd been addicted to crack. It's a huge amount of difficult stuff that I always knew that we were going to have to talk to our kids about at some point, but I thought that was something that we would be sharing together and that it would be a long time ahead. And the dilemma now, of course, because when anybody dies, when somebody dies in circumstances like that, and young, is that, as you say, he's a hero, and God knows he was a hero, but that doesn't negate all of those other truths. And so you're left with this problem as a family about when you do and don't tell the kids. And although I haven't told them any of this stuff, by writing the book, I've in a sense forfeited the right or the option of withholding it from them later when it is appropriate to tell them. And I hope that that's been the right thing to do, because I don't want to lie to them.
And we've only got a few more minutes left, and there's so much more to discuss, but you obviously felt quite alone in your relationship with him in terms of society, or perhaps even your wider family, how they viewed that relationship.
Yeah.
But what about your grief as well? That must have been really difficult to deal with.
Grief is just a fundamentally lonely thing. And one of the things I've learned through writing this book is that although my circumstances are very particular, our relationship was quite unusual, the nature of his death was extraordinary, and he was a remarkable person, there are universal themes about loss and bereavement and grief, and I think loneliness is probably the biggest one of all.
It appears as if you have endured some difficult experiences. Perhaps I have misjudged you. Perhaps you, a human being, having lived a life marred by tragedy, filled with sympathetic characters and the terrible burden and guilt of shame, would understand the necessity for sympathy, having seen the grave effects of reality firsthand on your own child. So, I ask, given the depth of your human experience, why would you wish to inflict shame on another? Let's review 4 life lessons easily parsed from your little narrative, a narrative which perhaps contains some humanities-laden nuggets of truth which have gone untrodden by you during your clearly uninformative tenure in politics and history at Manchester. 1. People are complicated. Your partner bears both the description of a hero and crack-addicted gang member. 2. Sparing one shame is the highest gift. Your son felt guilt, responsibility, shame for the death. To spare someone shame, as you have observed, is the ultimate gift. One you have clearly noted as noble, yet you are unwilling to absolve those from shame who are not your immediate biological kin. 3. Life is suffering. Sometimes loved ones die. Maybe we should be kind to one another in our daily dealings, in the way we engage with others, the things we say about them in public. 4. Grief is lonely. Kafka noted, "We are as forlorn as children lost in the woods. When you stand in front of me and look at me, what do you know of the griefs that are in me, and what do I know of yours? And if I were to cast myself down before you and weep and tell you, what more would you know about me than you know about hell when someone tells you it is hot and dreadful? For that reason alone, We human beings ought to stand before one another as reverently, as reflectively, as lovingly as we would before the entrance to hell. And though grief be lonely, and the problem of solipsism be real, by some magical transmutation of belief in the realness of the other, it is through our shared griefs that we can relate to each other across space and time. That is the gift of the humanities, to feel like a hand has reached out and taken yours, grasped it firmly, or to be that hand, yourself, for someone else. Life is suffering, Decca. You and Mikhaila both know what it is like to have cancer-stricken mothers. I would never wish to cast judgment upon your partner for his past, or on your mother for her decision to relieve herself her suffering, given that you are intimately aware that people can be complicated beings, that life is difficult, that grief is lonely, that a hero can also hit the pipe, that sometimes existence is unbearably painful, and death seems an easier approach. Perhaps even the opponents you wish to tar and feather, who you hate for their pipe smoking, by chance have performed quiet acts of heroism of which you are undoubtedly unaware and are thus ignorantly ungracious towards. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Go back to writing books about how Molly is nice. Look to your native Shakespeare, rediscover the humanities. I think you need a serious dose of Harold Bloom. You have drunk too deep from the fount of the school of resentment, and you need to be reminded of the purpose of the humanities, of writing beyond utility. The humanities as comfort, as uplift to the spirits in times of anguish, not social criticism vehicle. You could be doing so much better with your time than this, Decca, your precious, limited energy and time on God's green earth. In closing, I'm reminded of a parable about Churchill and Stalin. Sharing a week in Russia, these two uncomfortable allies are having a difficult time bonding, relating to one another, despite the necessity of goodwill if the war effort is to be fruitful. Then, on the final night, Stalin and Churchill become intimately drunk with one another. In a moment of tenderness, Stalin brings Churchill into his private quarters and shows off his daughter, placing his hand lovingly atop her head, noting, "Even Bolsheviks have families." Stalin says this to the man who had, in detail, in Parliament, previously claimed his desire to strangle Bolshevism in its cradle. Political animosity is eternal, ladies, an existential problem, i.e., part and parcel of existence. Life is short. We each share in us, in the foundations of our beings, families, tragedies, personal triumphs, deceits, moments of heroism, and acts of cowardice, all of this blended together into an indistinguishable haze of human experience. Where does Mikhaila begin and Decca end? To address that, we need only return to Mikhaila's question, which I repeated in triplicate at the start of this endeavor. Why is this article about me? And that is the dirty little secret hiding at the bottom of language, the sneaky underhandedness of all propositions. Decca's article isn't about you. It's about her. We think that when we speak of an objective world. However, anytime we string together propositions, when we open our mouths, every sentence is more like a Rorschach blot, a litmus test for our being. We say nothing of an objective world. Ever. It is not even within the realm of possibility, given the constraints of language. So, think on your article, Decca, and I hope this answers your question, Mikhaila. Whenever we criticize another, we are criticizing only ourselves. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. I think every day is Judgment Day, and Bolsheviks have families too. What do we say, ladies? Why don't we try extra hard to be extra nice today, to love our enemies like our brothers, to take care of our families, and to focus our attention elsewhere? I think there are bigger fish to fry, and life is not lived in some ghostly ideological struggle against Platonic forms in our imagination, but is found in the daily interactions with others who, under the aspect of the problem of solipsism, we must constantly convince ourselves are real and deserving of our attention. Even those we disagree with politically, even those prettier than us. Van Gogh says that the hardest art is loving people. Perhaps, Decca, if journalism is not your gambit, you could try your hand at that. Lovingly yours, Wax Costanza.